All right, there we go. Hello everyone, how's it going? Team here, and this is BxJS Weekly, episode 124, bringing you all the best JavaScript news of the week in a podcast form. And today we got a smallish version of that podcast, I guess. I don't understand how this works, but yeah, some weeks we have a lot, other weeks not so much. I guess it's summer, so maybe a lot of people are just not working that much, but anyway. As usual, the first section of the week is getting started. We got 4 things here today. The first one is the new, pretty large course from Microsoft that is titled Building JavaScript Applications with Node.js. And it seems to provide a really nice starting point for, well, basically learning what is Node.js, how it works, and how do you build web apps using it, which is pretty damn nice, to be honest. So this is a set of videos and text. Well, basically it's a course, right? So I guess if you are just getting started and you were curious where to find the courses for Node.js and maybe how to tie it into Azure, which, you know, since it's Microsoft, it's got to be Azure related, do check this one out. It seems to be pretty damn good and nicely built and covers everything from the very basics to, you know, RESTful APIs with Express and stuff like this. So if you're interested, do check it out. Next article we got here is functional user interfaces with Moon.js. So this is the kind of basic tutorial and introduction to Moon.js, which if you never heard about it, which, you know, might not be that surprising, is a tiny functional declarative library that aims to be a competitor kind of to React and Vue.js that is super small and super fast. And, well, you know, the syntax is not too different from React and Vue, so very similar-ish JSX stuff and things like this. But if you never heard about it and if you wanted something very small and very fast, then this is a pretty good tutorial to get you started. So if that sounds interesting, do check it out. Hey, Mr. Readable, welcome to the stream. All right, next article we got here is a gentle introduction to Webpack from Mr. Tyler McGuinness, who has a ton of courses that are really, really good from what I've heard. I haven't actually taken them myself, so, you know, I'm going to take the word of my viewers for that. But this is sort of an article that only covers the Webpack, a pretty good introduction to it. That is sort of a preview of the React course that he has published. So if you are struggling with Webpack, I would highly recommend looking at that. I mean, I honestly don't know who uses Webpack directly in 2020 if you're not developing a framework, but if you are interested in learning it, this is a really good starting point, and maybe then you can check out his course, because again, from what I've heard, it's really, really good. But yeah, there you go. Last article we got here for today is an introduction to Stimulus.js, which is quite interesting. So Stimulus, if you've never heard about it, is the framework from the people behind Basecamp and Hey mailing app. And essentially is a very small, lightweight JavaScript framework that encourages you not to use JavaScript, as, you know, as weird as it sounds. The gist is that you can basically use HTML and CSS for whatever you need, and then add a sprinkle of JavaScript using Stimulus on top to get that last bit of interactivity. And you know, I personally like that idea, and this article walks you through what's the way Stimulus works, what can you do with it, the basic functions and stuff like this. So count it as a tutorial, I guess. If that sounds interesting, do check the article out. Right, that's it for the getting started section. Now we got 2 articles here in the bigger article section, I guess. The first one is a pretty interesting write-up on the rise and rise of JSON. So this talks about the fact that JSON has taken over the world and how it actually came to this. It brought up the interesting point that I somehow completely just, you know, disappeared from my mind, the fact that in JavaScript we have a thing called Ajax, right? Or I guess nobody even uses this term anymore, but Ajax was a hot thing back in 2000, what was it, 5, I think, right? And Ajax literally stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML, not asynchronous JavaScript and JSON, as the author knows here. So Ajax and the API that we actually use to execute the requests is XML HTTP request, right? So it was all supposed to work with XML, but somehow over time it all switched to JSON. And Yeah, so Ajax, probably it is Ajax because Ajax, I'm not even sure how to read that, is not that appealing acronym, you know. But it's a fascinating read on how exactly we came from using XML for everything to JSON. How did the first JSON message looked, and why exactly is JSON now more widespread than XML, and a bunch of other things, which is pretty fascinating. It's also like lightweight comparison of JSON and XML. As a person working with, like, I used to work with XML a lot, and if you ever try to dive into the semantic web, you know that one of the core representations of the RDF is in, you know, RDF XML. XML is not nice to read. Like, whatever you do with it, it might be okay-ish for parsing, but holy crap, as a human, that format is not very good. And yeah, there's also the angle bracket tags, which is even makes it even worse, basically. JSON, on the other hand, is maybe not the nicest format to read, but at least it's easy enough to read and comprehend as, you know, as a person looking at the data. But yeah, it's like, it's a very fascinating read. So if you're interested in history of JSON and how it came to be the language of the web, essentially, do check it out. It's a really good write-up. There's a lot of very interesting references here, and it's pretty cool. Let me have a look at the comments. The most powerful JSON. I mean, kind of fair. I think XML was because of ActiveX. No, so the XML was very dominant, not just because of ActiveX. There was like the Java relied heavily on it. And it was built originally as a language that was supposed to be applicable to pretty much everything, right? So it's very universal. The problem is that because it's very universal, it's that complex and that hard to read for humans, primarily, that nobody would basically use that. Sure, I can post a link in the chat, but as usual, you can find them on the GitHub. So just go ahead and look there as well. Okay, many chapter on XML and web data management. XML is still very widespread, especially in the, what do you call it? In the enterprise technologies, right? So a lot of legacy enterprise still uses the XML, and you're not going to get completely away from it. But when you're building UIs, especially when you're building web applications, it's a ton easier to work with JSON than with XML. I mean, I don't even know. There's probably some XML parsers for JavaScript, but that's a pain in the ass to use, let's be honest. Well, with JSON, you just natively use it from JavaScript without any additional tools, right? I think this is sort of the main, one of the main reasons why this was, why JSON got as popular as it is right now. Semantic web. I mean, semantic web is a thing. It's a very niche thing right now, and it didn't get as popular as people thought it would, but it's still a very powerful area that allows you to do some pretty crazy things. I mean, you know, deep learning and all that kind of stuff, like the crazy things you see related to machine learning are reliant very heavily on semantic web technologies, like the IBM Watson, for example. It wouldn't win the competition if it wasn't for the data that it had in semantic web formats, like specifically the DBpedia, for example, as a knowledge base. But in behind it, it wouldn't answer those questions that was asked at the time. Maybe GPT-3 will change that over time, but we're going to have to see how that develops. Anyhow, the last article we got here for today is the Your Blog Doesn't Need a JavaScript Framework, or Why I Choose Eleventy over Gatsby for My New Website. This is sort of reasoning from one author here specifically on why to choose Eleventy, which is a purely static website generator, over the Gatsby, which actually provides the, you know, the JavaScript tooling and React tooling around the statically generated website for your blog. And while I agree with most of the points made here on the topic of blogging, like your blog typically doesn't need any reactivity. Your blog doesn't need any fancy JavaScript, any additional dynamic parts, right? Like 99% of the time that's going to be the case. But that's not sort of the strength of the Gatsby and the strength of what it provides as a static website generation framework, right? The whole point of Gatsby is not just statically generate website. And while there's an interesting point actually here, the author found some Gatsby plugins that can actually strip all the JavaScript from Gatsby websites. You can generate purely HTML, like purely static website that doesn't have any JavaScript at all using Gatsby, which is kind of cool actually. But that's, in my opinion, that's kind of the defeating the purpose of Gatsby, because from my experience, Gatsby was made to allow you to blend those two things, right? To blend the static generation, where you can immediately render some static web page for the client, and then after a few seconds after the JavaScript downloads, you can actually allow for some dynamic content, whatever that might be. And it's really easy to mix those two with Gatsby. I haven't seen any other frameworks that allows for, I mean, okay, I have seen another one, which is Next.js, which is slightly different beast essentially, but you know what I mean. 11t on the other hand is super straightforward, super simple, very fast in comparison to Gatsby, but again, doesn't provide all those fancy features. But if you are thinking about crafting your own blog and we're curious as to what are the options and how do you make it the smallest, the fastest, the JavaScript less version of that, do check the article out. It actually does a pretty good job of, well, evaluating those two against the, making the blog not something fancy with dynamic content essentially. 4 a.m. gang. Holy, why are you not sleeping? Just that's not healthy, Anyway, continuing, we going to tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness. So we got quite a few cool things here today. So the first one is this collection of all the ways to make a web component updated at June 2020. So this is literally, you get one very simple component that is called myCounter, that basically is just a counter with plus and minus and allows you to, press them and increase or decrease the counter, right? Super straightforward. But there is 33 variants here showing you how you can build something like this using 33 different tools, frameworks, approaches, whatnot, to specifically build a web component. Starting with just basic HTML element with, plain JavaScript, going to stuff like lighter HTML, lit HTML, UHTML, Pan.js, Omi, Atomico. Like, if there is a framework that allows you to build web components, including React, Preact, and other stuff, you can actually find an example here. Includes also Svelte, Vue.js, which is kind of cool, I think. So if you're interested in web components and you wanted to see how you can build one using different technologies and maybe compare them and figure out which one is best for you, do check this one out. Also includes additional data such as bundle analysis, the sizes of the resulting components, and so on and so forth, which is pretty damn cool. I wish they had some sort of a... Yeah, they do have the summary, I think. It's just not rendering, right? Is that my JavaScript blocking again, kicking in? Yeah, there you go. There's even some very nice charts showing you the min-zipped sizes across different frameworks. The Vue, React, and other stuff is obviously going to be the largest ones because they have to package the framework itself in there. But it's a really, really nice overview, I guess, of the ways to build web components. So if that sounds interesting, absolutely do check this one out. Right, the next thing we got here is the tiny GitHub gist from Dr. Axel Rauschmar, who is covering the server-side events. So the gist is titled Using Server-Side Events, Server-Sent Events. And that is a thing I did not know exist before actually looking at this. So apparently there's a server-sent events spec that is now supported by all evergreen browsers. So if you throw out, the old Internet Explorer essentially and just use the evergreen stuff, including even Safari, which was surprising to me, you can use server-sent events. So you can basically register event source from the browser for a specific server endpoint, and then add a listener to that event source, and then send something from the browser from that endpoint, which will be dynamically handled by the client, which is pretty damn awesome. So this is, I guess, kind of an alternative to WebSockets, a lighter weight alternative. I'm not sure how it works internally, so I didn't have time to investigate this, but this seems really, really cool. So if you don't need to set up the WebSockets because it might be a pain in the ass, this is essentially just a stream. So you can return a stream, and then you can just throw stuff into that stream, and the client will get it, which is kind of cool. So if that sounds interesting, if you have any use cases in mind, do check it out. Seems to be pretty damn good. And yeah, I probably would need to play around with that as well. Right, next thing we got here is what the fuck is dynamic dispatch? So it's another article from Dan Abramov on his what the fuck is. I also believe he created a less, like there was the what the freak is. No, what was the? He created a less, like as he said, less obscene version of it. What the duck is or something? I don't remember what was it. Anyhow, this one is with swearing, but essentially it covers the dynamic dispatch. So if you are still confused as to what dynamic dispatch is, have a look at this brief explanation, description. Maybe this will help you finally figure that one out. Please try this out on stream. Well, maybe we'll do it at some point, so it will be very interesting to play with it and see how exactly it works internally. Anyhow, the next announcement we got here is Svelte loves TypeScript. So there is a new Svelte release which basically adds the TypeScript support. So you can now have this Svelte scaffold the new Svelte app using the TypeScript and write your stuff in TypeScript. And yeah, that's basically all that says, right? So if you were interested in Svelte but were holding back because it didn't support TypeScript for whatever reason, now you can check it out. So all that stuff now works with TypeScript. You have all your type checking and everything in place, and all of that is basically set up for you. You can just use it nicely with .svelte files and everything, which, you know, sounds nice if you are into TypeScript. So there you go. Okay, and the last thing we got here is the minor announcement, I guess, that the proposal for records and tuples, which is the immutable data types that are, I guess now we can say for sure that they are coming to JavaScript soon-ish, moves to stage 2. So this is now stage 2, which means it is quite advanced already, right? So there's just like 2 more stages until it gets shipped. And I cannot be happier to see this advancing. I am a big fan of immutable data structures. They make thinking about data flow 100 times easier because you no longer have to keep in mind the side effects and everything, and you can just, you know, see immediately what's happening. And yeah, I know that some people don't really like the syntax, so it's like you use the hash before the object or array notation to mark it as a record or a tuple, which is, you know, immutable object or immutable array basically. I personally am okay with that. So like, it doesn't look terrible. I don't know if there's gonna be, like, I cannot think of any other way that it would be easier and shorter to denote something as immutable, right? So like, I'm okay with that, basically, is what I'm saying. If you're curious, do check it out. It seems pretty cool. So you now basically have strict equality between the 2 similar records or tuples, which is great. No more weird, deep, nested comparisons. You can just use that, which is pretty damn great. So I cannot wait for that to come to stage 3 and then be shipped in V8 and Node.js and, you know, Chrome Edge and everything else, which is pretty damn exciting, to be honest. So there you go. Okay, this is it for the tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness. Now we are coming to the releases section. We got 4 of them here, starting with the Vue.js version 3.0 release candidates. So this has been already by like 4 of them or 5 even. I'm not even sure where. So there's the docs, and they had the GitHub. So the Vue next. Now, no, that's the old Vue. Wait a second. Let me just quickly tell you how many releases we already had, because they are really active and patching things basically and releasing the new version. So we now have, yeah, release candidate number 4 happened 4 days ago. If you're curious, do check it out. The composition API is pretty cool. There's some really nice new features. I've tried it out during the live stream last Wednesday, so the video is on YouTube if you're curious. It was quite nice. I mean, again, some things didn't quite work out for me. I'm not sure if that's the holes in the documentation and I just did something wrong, or if that's just the bugs in the release candidates. But we'll be curious to try out the final version once it comes out as well. Some of those things look pretty damn good. So if you are interested in Vue, do make sure to check this one out. It's pretty solid stuff. Right, next thing we got here is Preact CLI version 3. Version 3 as well. So this one is a major update that includes a ton of new things. First one being the like modern JavaScript output. So it basically does the whole legacy bundle, modern browsers bundle that is a lot smaller, and, you know, the module no module loading pattern, which allows you to decrease the size of the app significantly for people with the modern browsers, which is super damn cool. There's critical CSS inlining, which is also quite nice, partial hydration, and so on and so forth. So there's like a ton of new features. Make sure to check it out if you're working with Preact. It seems like a really solid release. Takes me back to view stream window buffer. Yeah, we did that. We definitely did that. I mean, it worked, right? So it's that's a thing. Anyhow, continuing, we got V8 version 8.5. So this is a new release for the V8 engine, which brings us promise.any, an aggregate error for promises, as well as string replace all and logical assignment operators, which I don't think I've ever had any use cases for that, but if you did, that's, that looks fine. It looks nice for the cases when you need that. I'm guessing it's not gonna be that frequent, but nice to have them anyway. And we got a bunch of WebAssembly improvements, with the major one being the liftoff is now used as the baseline compiler for WebAssembly on Intel platforms, which is super nice. We also finally got the multi-value support and also the big int support within the WebAssembly, which is super cool to see. So there we go. The last release we got here is Chrome 85, which I believe is the beta version right now, which adds fetch, upload, streaming, WebHID API that are supposed to unify the human input, what is the HID? The human interface devices API, which is, the keyboards, pointing, gamepads, and so on and so forth, into one umbrella API that you can basically use to access any of them, which is super nice. And there's a bunch of other trials, origin trials that they use. So if you're curious, do check it out. All right, that's it for releases. Now we're coming to the libs and demos. We do have quite a few of them here. Starting with windmill-react-ui, which is a component library for fast and accessible development of gorgeous interfaces, as they title it. The UI itself looks quite nice. They do have quite a ton of components here, including stuff like avatars, backdrops, badges, cards, pagination, selects, tables, text variants, transitions, and so on and so forth. All of that looks pretty damn nice. They also say that all of this is accessible. I haven't actually tried it myself, so if you are interested, do check it out. Again, this was the windmill-react-ui. Next thing we got here is Dendron, a personal knowledge management tool that grows as you do. So essentially it's, personal knowledge management tool sets. What I found interesting is that this one was built on top of VS Code. So essentially it's a highly customized VS Code that allows you to manage your knowledge within the complex structure, and you still have access to the majority of the VS Code features, let's put it this way, which I found to be interesting. If you are a person who, saves a lot of his knowledge and tries to manage it somehow, do check it out. Maybe this is exactly what you were looking for. Again, it is called Dendron. And next thing we got here is wiki.js, a modern, lightweight, and powerful wiki app built on top of Node.js. This one is a pretty nice looking wiki, essentially, that you can self-host or host internally in your company to get, internal knowledge managed somehow. It looks very nice, very fancy design. From what I've read, it's pretty good, maybe not as snappy, a bit more demanding, I guess, than the older PHP-based wikis, but it is modern, it is Node.js based, and seems to be quite highly customizable, so maybe this is what you were looking for. There is a demo, so if you want to check it out, it's under wiki.js.org. And again, this was wiki.js. Next thing we got here is React Guitar, a beautiful and flexible guitar component for React. There is a live demo that basically shows you the fretboard, where you can place the fingers essentially, and then you can even strum it to hear what it would sound like. That was absolutely terrible. Do not listen to that. But yeah, it seems like, a very nice guitar component. So if you're building anything music related or guitar related, I guess, and wanted to render some chords or anything, then do check this one out. React Guitar is pretty nice. Any plans to trace source code, like maybe Node.js or Webpack? What do you mean by trace source code? I'm not sure I understand the meaning of that. While you're answering, we are continuing to the Caterpillar, which is the ultimate logging system for Denon, Node, and web browsers. Log levels are implemented to the RFC standard. Log entries can be filtered and piped to various streams, including colored output to terminal, browser's console, and debug files. So yeah, it's a very fancy login library that works in all the JavaScript environments, essentially, as you heard. And there's a bunch of ways to use it. It looks quite nice. It supports a bunch of features. If you were looking for yet another logging library, or maybe you were looking for a fancy login library for Deno, which, you know, is relatively fresh, new JavaScript environment that doesn't have that much of an ecosystem right now, do check Caterpillar out. It seems to be pretty nice. Learning parts of code base and eventually maybe contributing. No, I'm like... I did that for some projects. I don't remember. We did it for a smallish project, but that is probably going to be one of the most boring live streams ever, because I'm literally just going to be sitting there and figuring out what the hell is going on for the first couple of hours. Like, it's really easy for me to talk when I am building something myself, because all of that is happening immediately in my mind, right? Before I start contributing, I have to just sit and look at the code base before I can actually tell you anything. And that sit and look is going to take half an hour, I don't know, depending on the code base complexity, is going to be very, very long. And if we're taking something as big as Node or Webpack, it's just not going to be interesting for people to watch, right? So I'm just going to be sitting there and be like, yeah, okay. And then half an hour later, I will start talking, which is, I don't think it's going to be exciting for anyone, let's be honest. But anyway, I did the sort of code reading and contributing at some point. So if you're curious, do find the older video and check it out. Not as a live stream. Well, I mostly do live streams, so not doing as a live stream unfortunately requires more commitment than I can afford right now, but maybe at some point in the future, like, I don't know, we'll see how that develops. Anyway, continuing, we got grid, which is the rows and columns, which is essentially a React component for tabular data. There is a rows and columns.app website that shows you the spreadsheet grid that looks a lot like Excel. And the idea here is that it's a React.js component that renders the grid in a very high performance environment. So it uses Canvas to actually render the grid. It is declarative, easily customizable, and supports a ton of features. So it does support majority of features you would expect from an Excel-like grid. Unfortunately, right now it doesn't support formulas yet, so they are coming soon, as the title says here. But if you are looking to do something like the, spreadsheets in React, then this actually looks like a really, really nice option. So if you are curious, do check out the grid. Again, it's actually, I guess, rows and columns / grid would be the way to put it, because this is how the repo is called. Is not exactly the best name for it, I guess. All right, continuing, we got Trex or Trex. I'm not sure how exactly to read that. This is a package manager for Deno, because of course it's going to happen sooner or later. It has a T-Rex as the logo, so I'm not sure it's written Trex, but there's a T-Rex, so Trex. Yeah, hi Trex, welcome to the stream. Fair enough. But yeah, it is a package manager for Deno, so it's supposed to simplify the managing packages. I mean, you already have the import map and stuff, so it basically allows you to streamline some of the tasks that you typically need to do for the dependencies, which seems like a nice first step, so we're going to see how that develops. Again, I'm pretty much sure Ryan said that Deno will get the third-party package manager at some point, because the URLs are just a starting point, but yeah. Tell us how it's pronounced. How's it? I mean, pronounced T-Rex. Oh yeah, okay. I'm blind, obviously. As usual, I'm blind. Thank you very much, Dorak, for pointing this out. So it pronounced T-Rex. There you go. Okay, so it's a Trex package manager for Deno. So if you're using Deno, make sure to check this one out. All right, continuing, we got node-oas-request. So this is OAS 3.x dynamic request clients, essentially code generators for OpenAPI. And yeah, it seems to be very nice. It seems to be very simple, very straightforward. If you're working with open APIs and wanted open API spec compliant HTTP client, do check this one out. It seems to be pretty damn good. All right. Hey, Dimitra, welcome to the stream. All right, next thing we got here is react-fusionui nuclear power up for your UI, as it says. It's essentially a very nice tooling for models and dialogues in React, for working with models and dialogues in React. Seems pretty nice. Like, you know, again, models and dialogues were like used to be hard-ish to work with. Nowadays, with the hooks, they are relatively straightforward, but I know that it can be a pain in the ass to set up yourself. And something battle-tested and nicely made might be a lot easier to use than, you know, rolling your own version. So if you're working with models and pop-ups a lot, then do check out react-fusionui. Maybe this will help you. Next thing we got here is uuid-readable, the generator for easy-to-remember readable UUIDs that are Shakespearean and grammatically correct sentences, which is, I honestly don't know. Okay, let me try this again. I honestly don't know why would you need that. Why would anyone need Shakespearean and grammatically correct sentences as UUIDs? But that's a thing, and you can use that library to generate those, and they actually look really nice. Like, I cannot imagine how much work it was to build something like this. It's absolutely bonkers, but that now exists and you can use it, and it's amazing on its own. So if you have a use case for that, do check it out. It's uuid-readable, which is pretty damn good, to be honest. Right, and still the last thing we got here for today is Perfect Arrows, a minimal tool for drawing perfect arrows between points and shapes. This one is actually super impressive. So there's some really, really impressive geometry going on around, and it essentially allows you to draw arrow connecting two dots for now, essentially 2 points. And they have plans for adding the arrow that connects 2 rectangles and probably later on some other figures. This looks really, really good, and if you're working with anything that is graphical and you ever try to draw an arrow programmatically yourself, you know how much pain in the ass that is. So this library will simplify things a lot for you. If you are interested, do check perfect-arrows or perfect-arrows out. That seems to be very cool. I saw this Libs multiple times this week. People have a bunch of times. I'm terrible at reading everything, apparently. I saw this lib multiple times this week. People have too much time in their hands. I mean, if someone built it, there's a use case for that. So that's, you know, people don't build things just because they... Okay, most of the time people don't build things just because they want to build things. So there's got to be a use case for this, and it's probably just, you know, me and you don't know what that is. Anyhow, this was the last library I had for today, so that actually concludes the podcast. If you guys have any questions, suggestions, you want to share something, you have a few seconds to throw that into the chat right now. No, I got that you meant the Shakespearean lib. Again, as you know, I think there's obviously a use case there, otherwise it wouldn't have been built. I guess you could use that for stuff like encryption phrases that you pre-generate for users and things like this. But yeah, it's like there's obviously a use case. It says it's to help the customer support remember their IDs. Oh, okay. That's, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. So stuff like this, maybe a bit too long, but yeah, that's, oh, they have it listed. Okay, again, I'm blind. So thank you very much for highlighting this. Yeah, okay, customer support. Okay, they literally have use cases section here. If I would read the whole thing, maybe I would find this. But thank you very much for highlighting that. Anyway, if you guys have any more questions, suggestions, you want to share your libs, feel free to throw them into the chat right now. If not, then we can just wrap this up. What ORM do you recommend? I would say that would heavily depend on your use case. So this is, or what ORM, what database, what library you use. There is no definitive answer, almost never. Like, you always want to evaluate them against your specific use case to pick the one that would help you figure out your needs in the simplest, fastest, cheapest way. Type ORM is nice. Again, I would say, you know, like maybe Mongoose is enough for you. Maybe you can even just use a simple query builder. It's really hard to answer the question when you don't know the requirements, right? So base this off of the requirements you have, and like never just pick something because it's popular, because it might not fit your needs, and then you're going to regret it basically. So it's a very broad question. It's basically impossible to answer that without knowing specifics. All right, any more questions, suggestions, or libraries you want to share? Maybe you built something cool this week and just throw it into the chat and we have a look right now, and everyone will know about it, because why not? If not, then we can just wrap it up here for today. While you're thinking, you can find all the links on github.com as usual, building X with JS, BxJS Weekly, or bxjs.dev. You can join our Discord server to talk about, well, any of the stuff here, or video games, or whatever the hell you want. We do a lot of talking there about different things that are not really related to software development as well. You can follow me on Twitter for updates and random shit posting. You can follow the Telegram channel where I collect the links essentially over the week. Not all of them make it to this podcast, so if you want to see the unfiltered stuff, then, you know, and this is the place basically. Let me have a look at the chat. What do you think about Redux ORM? I have not used it. I am not a big fan of Redux because of all the pain around setting up the, you know, the whole like boilerplate, and it's a huge pain in the ass to use, and I don't see a need to use it when we have stuff like Apollo GraphQL, for example. Like, it's a lot easier to use than just about anything in React world. Postgres plus GraphQL prototyping in large projects. That is still not, like, that is not requirements, right? So, like, Postgres plus GraphQL, but you don't need ORM, right? You have GraphQL now. Like, why would you need ORM then? You have GraphQL, that means if you have Postgres, you can just take something like Hasura, plop it on top of your Postgres, you get your GraphQL API, you're done. You don't need any ORM anymore. But again, you know, this is not enough information to give you any recommendations. Yes, I have tried Prisma and Hasura. Prisma definitely didn't like it. It might have some use cases, but just didn't like the approach. It's very weird. Feels really weird to me. Hasura was awesome though, so I can definitely recommend that. If you have Postgres already and you haven't built your GraphQL API, you can just take Hasura and turn your Postgres database into API with some incredible tech underneath. Like, this is, I really want to have some project where I could play around with it more and like build something production ready. Unfortunately, it didn't happen yet, but yeah. Anyway, Hasura looked amazing. Alt-lib I wrote for fun and to learn more about the open source life cycle. Did you share the link? Because it seems like YouTube just killed it and it's annoying. I remember, oh yeah, we had that problem before. God damn it, YouTube eats the links. Oh my god. Yeah, so I know that Twitch doesn't kill the links, which is let me just, you know what, if you're in Discord, you can just share it there and I can just have a look at that, because it's really annoying how YouTube just randomly kills the links because it thinks it's spam, where I literally asked people to I need to find some better way of doing that. But anyway, on GitHub, I don't, oh yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. Yes, let's check this out. Why not? github.com. That is too many slashes. Oh, okay, GitHub actually still does it. React D3 GG plots. React and D3 for data visualization on the web. Yeah, Aaron. So this is the YouTube is very weird. Like, I have unchecked all the boxes that basically allow everyone to post the links. The only box I check is basically, you know, cache the spam, and it seems like the YouTube doesn't care what link it is, and it just catches all the links and say, hey, this is spam, basically. It's a bit of a bullshit. But oh yeah, there was the Swix. I've seen his tweets about the GPT-3. Oh yeah, okay. We can use that as well. Like, GPT-3 is definitely interesting, but man, so I really, like, I think I'm not the only one who already was saying that OpenAI should rename themselves to Closed AI because they are not open in any way. Like, I get that GPT-3 is incredibly large and it took them, what was it? I think it was like 400 GPU years to train that thing. But just don't call yourself OpenAI, please. Like, if you don't publish anything but papers, like, how the hell are you OpenAI? But yeah, GPT-3 looks really cool. Like, some of the results that it produces are really, really awesome. Like, some of the things that people build with it is really cool. Again, I would want to see the model itself. I want to get my hands on the model and just play around with it myself, and that will be pretty damn fun to do. But that's probably not going to happen, right? So they're probably going to provide it as an API that you're going to pay for and you're going to use it. And again, why are you calling yourself OpenAI if you're just like commercial organization doing AI? Nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong, you know, but just The whole OpenAI thing is ugh. Hey Mustafa, welcome to the stream. All right, but yeah, if you haven't seen GPT-3 yet, absolutely do check out the demos that are out there. It is mind-blowingly awesome. Like, some of those things are just insane. Like, the AI dungeon is probably one of the most impressive I've seen so far. If you never played the AI dungeons, it's essentially the text-based game that is generated based on your answers, right? So it's like the build your own adventure, but AI generated. And the GPT-3 model produces some insane stuff. Like, man, this is really impressive. There was also the stuff like building the HTML layouts, building functioning React components from just a word input, Swift UIs, regular expressions, shell commands, whatever. It's really impressive what it can do basically. But yeah. Okay, so back to the React D3 plots. I built quite a few D3 plots with React myself, and that's a nice demo. Like, yeah, so seems relatively basic, few components. Again, D3 is incredibly powerful, and I think there's like hundreds of wrappers around for it around React. It's not that hard to do, especially with the hooks, I think, right now, to wrap it yourself. But that seems a relatively interesting. Why would you import them line by line though? Like, you can do it on one line, right? So at least this is my preferred way. D3 is awesome. Absolutely agree. D3 is amazing library, and you can do some crazy stuff with it. Even games, you can literally build games on top of that. But yeah, looks like a nice lib. Why did you decided to archive that? I would just, I mean, you know, it's 15 months, like 11 months ago updated. That's not even that old, so it will be just leave it here and let people use it, because why not? But anyhow, if you guys have any more questions or suggestions, then now's your chance to throw them into the chats. If not, then we can just wrap it up here and finish it. Spending too much time on it. That makes sense. I mean, yeah, I can relate. Okay, fair enough. You know, cannot argue with that. All right. Wanted to do other more interesting stuff. Fair enough. Can totally agree with that. You know, I did that more than I can admit to. Okay, any more questions, suggestions, or things you want to talk about? Hey, Tolomedia, welcome to the stream. It has been a while. I haven't seen you in a while, mate. What are your thoughts on the future role of software engineering with the process of GPT-3? With the progress of GPT-3? Well, so the thing about GPT-3 is that, first of all, it's based on the existing knowledge, right? And second of all, there was already a joke that, I think it was on the, wait a second, Reddit or programmer humor, I think. There was the joke about the GPT-3. Oh yeah, there you go. It's on the top right now. To replace programmers with robots, clients will have to accurately describe what they want. We're safe. I think this is the perfect summary of, you know, what the AI, like, even though GPT-3 and AI in general can augment your work, it can produce the code, you still have to be very precise in telling it what to do, right? And if you ever worked with business side of software development, if you ever talk to clients, or even if you ever talk to higher level managers who have the vision for the product but don't really know anything about the software development, you know that they almost never can describe what they want in a really precise manner, right? So they always have this very vague thing. Well, I want it to work this way and this way. And then when you just sit down and start thinking about, okay, this should be like 25 more states that the app is in, and how do we figure that out? So it's never as simple as that. No AI ever will probably get close to building a product from someone just saying, hey, I want a to-do app, right? So if that app existed somewhere in the background knowledge of this AI, it would probably just give it to you, obviously. But yeah, I think this meme sort of summarizes quite nicely. Clients will no business person will ever be able to accurately describe what they want, because they don't know all the details of building the software, right? And the senior developers and lead developers, architects, are the people that basically are the ones responsible for ironing out all these details while talking to the clients, right? So I think we're totally safe on this side. It's hard to test the edge case. Building good models requires a lot of good data. Yeah, the data is the bottleneck is always, and getting good data. I mean, GPT-3 is actually manages to work really well with the corpus it has, and it's not even, you know, the filtered data, essentially just the whole internet basically, right? So I'm wondering if at some point we're going to move from the good data to just a lot of data, and then AI is going to switch from just, you know, requiring good corpus to just being good enough to understand which data is good or not, which would be very interesting to see how that develops. Your model is only good as your data. Well, yes, for now, right? So this is kind of the where we're sort of moving right now. AI Dungeon is hilarious. Absolutely. Even the free version they have is just a blast to play for a few minutes, like if you have time. It's just the stories it generates is bonkers. Hey, Reason. I hate designing. It is a bad choice for me to go web dev. Well, that depends. So there's, like, web development is a very large area, right? I am not a designer myself. Like, I'm terrible at designing. And while I can, I can build the pages out of designs at a decent rate, I am not really good with that, right? So I'm full stack, first of all, right? So I can build equally good backend and front end. Well, maybe front end not as good as the backend, but anyway. So the web development, again, as I said, is a very wide range of tasks, has a very wide range of tasks you can do. So there's a possibility to work in there without ever even touching the design. So if you, the question is, why do you want to go into web dev? Do you enjoy that? If yes, then go for it. So like, if there's ways of not touching design and still doing web dev, absolutely. Is it just for money? That's also fine. You know, again, you can just be a backend developer, for example. It can still be built for web backends, and you're never going to have to touch the design at all. But this is kind of the gist. It's an interesting idea. I assume you're talking about my idea of the fact that the corpus is going to become less, like the quality of corpus is going to become less relevant. As a backend dev, what do you mostly focus on? I mean, again, this is like the backend dev is a very broad term as well, right? So it's anything from designing the database schema and picking the ORM and picking the right framework for the backend, spanning to infrastructure and, you know, writing the, I don't know, Terraform files or whatever, which is closer to the DevOps, but still sort of the backend anyway, right? So I personally, on my everyday job, I do, well, pretty much everything aside from the design, I guess. Because we're like a two-man startup and we have to finish building the thing, and I'm basically juggling the Terraform with building the backend, building GraphQL API, communicating with three databases, to building front ends, to doing a ton of other things. But yeah, it's kind of do be like that when you work on startups. All right. Any more questions, suggestions, or things you want to know? Have you tried Flutter? No, I have not tried Flutter. I mean, it uses the Dart language, right? The Google language, which I have zero interest in it. Like, Google tries really hard to push it, but like, I don't like it. I think JavaScript is good enough. And the Flutter thing, like, it looks very fancy, but from what I've seen, the resulting apps are not exactly super performant, and there's like a lot of problems. Ionic, I have worked with, what was it called before? What was it called? Wait a second. So Ionic is the new thing, and then before becoming Ionic, it was Cordova. That was the name of it. So I worked with Cordova, which is the predecessor of Ionic, essentially, and it has its place. Like, it's, you know, if you have a limited resources and you already have the web app, then Ionic is, or Cordova or whatever, it's a very nice way to package your app and just ship it. And Dart is similar to JS. I know it's similar to JS, but it's still a different language that is very niche, very tiny, pushed, just like built within Google and only used for one thing right now. Like, why would I learn that? I'd like, you know, I don't get it. I just don't want to spend my time on that, essentially. I'm too old to spend my time on learning a very niche language that's going to be used to build like 2.5 mobile apps. Thoughts on building a native app versus building a progressive web app? I think progressive web apps are much better for the future. So I kind of agree, and I kind of not sure that there's... So again, this is a very... this is a question that depends on the product in question, right? So if your product can be built purely as a progressive web app, then I would go ahead and build it as a progressive web app first, and then either build a native app if there's need, or package it as a, the Discord, for example, is the way they do. They just use the React Native or whatever and just ship it like this, right? But there are some apps that you cannot build as progressive web apps, unfortunately. Yes, the Safari support for progressive web apps is absolute garbage. It's getting better, but still bad. I mean, Twitter progressive web app is actually relatively good on iOS, so it's like it's getting there. But yeah, the iOS is lagging heavily behind in terms of the feature support. So yeah. For doing most things, you need native support. On iOS, absolutely, yeah. Like the progressive web apps are limited as hell. I'm hoping they're gonna open the ecosystem at some point. Like they're already allowing the switching the default apps in iOS 14, right? I'm hoping at some point they would allow the custom browser engines as well on the platform, and we're finally gonna get like a proper browser from Google folks or Microsoft folks or whatever. That would be great, but I'm not holding my breath. Maybe in 5 years. We're gonna see how that develops. But yeah. Any other questions or suggestions? That joke's on learning new language. That's not a joke, man. I'm like, come on. I have better uses for my time. I can go play video games. No, seriously though. Like, I've learned Golang, I've learned Rust because the Golang is also a language that came out of Google, right? And it was very niche in the beginning, but it exploded because people saw a use for it. Like, yes, it's still quite niche, but if you look at it, like the DevOps is now completely built on Golang. Like 99% of tools in DevOps world is built on Golang, and they're doing really good. Like you take the Docker, for example, it's a freaking amazing tool. So at this moment, I see I saw that, okay, Golang is widespread enough, so I'm going to learn it. Same with Rust, very niche language, started at Mozilla. They didn't really do that much with it at first. It was just like for the internal tools. But then they added WebAssembly to it. And when I see that I can use the language to do something within JavaScript, I'm going to learn it. So as soon as the Flutter becomes usable from JavaScript, I'm probably going to try and at least have a look at it. But so far, what I've seen, Dart, not Flutter, from Dart wasn't that interesting, basically. Personally, the front end is fragment, not as bad as before, but it's pain managing dependencies, updating to the latest packages without issues. I mean, updating to packages in any ecosystem is a pain in the ass unless you have a nice system in place. This is why you need this is why you need tests. And this is why you need some sort of a CI that will basically tell you if something breaks, if you update. Other than that, I don't think it's much different from any other language or ecosystem. Do you use Golang for backend in your startup? Not yet. So we are for now just the basically Node.js, but we're not. Oh, we do have some Python in there for what do you call it? For some machine learning, but not that much. But we do have plans for Golang once we see that, we start bottlenecking. But so far, Node.js and Python work just fine for us. If you're targeting Android more, then yeah, progressive web apps can work. You can add progressive web apps to the Play Store. Oh yeah, that is definitely a really cool move from the Google. And I mean, Microsoft also has that, right? So they just literally index them automatically. You don't even need to do anything, which is really cool. Cocoa Pods is a nightmare. Oh man, don't remind me. I worked with the Cocoa Pods in the very beginning when they were just released, and I still was building like iOS apps. That was not fun experience. Yeah, no ecosystem is perfect. Absolutely. Future is in the web. I think it's wise to spend time learning tech that can be used in the web context. Absolutely. I totally agree on that. I think that we are gonna gradually move more and more to the web from the from the native apps, because I mean you already know that, right? So I'm using the Discord. So this is my Edge browser. This is the Edge that is now opened as a window, and this is my Discord. And I don't need to install like 100 apps because I can just have a browser which launches a separate window which acts as an app, and that works like 90% of time for me. I'm hoping that, you know, the whole like all the experiments from Google and Microsoft are gonna get through, and where the web apps are gonna get access to the hardware, such as, you know, the Bluetooth. Like we already have the web Bluetooth, which is not yet standard, but we're getting there. So with like Bluetooth, hardware access, GPU. I mean, we already have the GPU access, so. And eventually we're just gonna have basically a browser and most of things that don't require some very low level things like gaming, for example, right? Even though you can do some very fancy games in the browser now, I'm just thinking that they're eventually gonna migrate to the browsers as well. So yeah, that's my viewpoint on that. I'm not sure if that's gonna become true, maybe not, but this is kind of my feeling about it. All right, any more questions, suggestions, or things you want to discuss, guys? Otherwise, we can just wrap it up here for today and go do something else. Microsoft will make Edge book. I mean, they already did, right? So like if you look at the Surface, what do you call it? They have this super cheap Surface that is like 300 or 400. Yeah, $400. No, that's not it. Wait a second. They have this Surface, what was it called? Surface Go or something? Come on now. Surface book. Okay, yeah, Surface Go. There you go. This is $400 for the touchscreen device with keyboard, which is, it actually is really good device, and it runs Windows and it has the Edge on it. I believe it is ARM based, but it's a really good device, and it's basically the same price as the Chromebook, right? So it's like they already did it basically, right? So it's like, yeah, let's go to the United States store. So they don't really let me try that again. They don't even have to do that because they already have a device like this. They just have to improve it. Maybe make it cheaper in the future, and it's a really good device. Native platforms are migrating more to web design patterns. Take Swift UI, for example. Android has a third-party declarative UI library. Now, I mean, it's not really web design patterns. It's more just declarative approach, right? It's ARM-based. I think it is ARM-based, if I remember correctly. Where's the tech specs? There we go. Blah blah blah. Where's the CPU? I believe it was ARM based, if I remember. Intel. Oh no, it is Intel. So what is this? It is Intel based. Okay. I had an impression it was ARM based. No, it's actually Intel. Yeah. So it's x86 for now. But Intel has been losing so badly in the last 2 years. I feel like either they're gonna get replaced with the ARM-based stuff or AMD stuff, because AMD has just been killing it lately. I'm thinking once we get some money, I'm probably gonna upgrade my computer and get like AMD-based. Surface X is ARM-based. Is that a new one that they have announced? I don't remember. I remember they had the Duo thing with 2 devices, 2 screens. Surface Pro X, that is quite expensive. This is definitely not in the, what do you call it? Not in the Chromebook territory. This one is oh yeah, right. That was their Microsoft custom CPU that they announced. Right, I remember this now. Yeah, okay. So this is the ARM-based Microsoft chip, which is it's very interesting to see both Microsoft and Apple basically migrate to their own chips based on ARMs. Did you hear about NVIDIA looking at buying ARM? No, I did not. That would be quite insane, actually. NVIDIA is killing it in terms of the GPUs and, you know, the whole like ray tracing and the GPUs for machine learning. I think NVIDIA is basically go-to right now. So if they would buy ARM, that would be very curious. I would be like compete with the AMD ATI merger. I don't like. NVIDIA is not really competing with AMD right now, aren't they? Like AMD GPUs are decent. They are very budget ones, but if you take the top end ones with like ray tracing and everything, it doesn't seem like AMD is that close to them right now. At least this is my impression. Maybe I'm just missing some news. But yeah. We have diverted far away from software development here. Anyway, I think we should wrap it up here. I probably should do some questions and answers stream and just chat with you guys at one point. That was pretty fun. But yeah, let's just wrap it up here for today for the podcast. Samsung AMD mobile deal. Interesting. I haven't heard about that as well. I should look that up. Okay, anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for all your questions and things you told me today. That was really entertaining. Again, I should probably do some questions and answers stream at some point. Just sit and chat. Maybe the next Wednesday instead of development stream. We're going to see how that goes. So once again, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I hope you enjoyed the stream. And yeah, enjoy your weekends or rest of the week if you're watching the VOD of this. And I see you on Wednesday for the next stream. Bye.